Imagine a day when the sky above Jerusalem tears open, the Mount of Olives trembling under a force no one can explain, and the eyes of the entire world fixed on a city that is not just made of stone and history, but the beating heart of a prophecy spanning thousands of years. Something is happening right now in Jerusalem in March 2025. Something so strange and powerful that prophets foretold it, the faithful awaited it, and even skeptics are beginning to notice. The signs are aligning, preparations are in full swing, and a question echoes louder each day. Are we ready for what lies ahead? Jerusalem isn't just an ordinary city, it's the stage where humanity's fate might be decided. And what's happening today could be just the beginning of something no one is prepared for. For centuries, the scriptures have spoken of a return, of a king who will once again step onto the land where he suffered, died, and rose again. That king is Jesus, and the Bible tells us exactly where he will return: the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem. Zechariah prophesied that on that day, Jesus' feet will touch the mount, and it will split in two, creating a vast valley that will change the earth and history forever. But before that day comes, there are signs, events, and preparations unfolding right before our eyes. Jerusalem has seen it all. King Solomon's first temple destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. Into the second temple razed by the Romans in 70 AD, as Jesus himself predicted in Matthew 24. And now, in 2025, rumors of a third temple are stronger than ever. Israel was reborn as a nation in 1948, captured Jerusalem in the Six-Day War of 1967, and each of these moments feels like a step toward a prophetic chapter about to begin. The Mount of Olives isn't just any place. It's where Jesus wept over Jerusalem's future, prayed in agony before his crucifixion, and ascended to heaven, promising to return. And now it's where he might land again. If this stirs you, if you feel something greater is happening and want to understand more, then don't miss this chance. Sign up now to receive more information about what's coming, because what you'll discover might completely change how you see the world. Click there, join us, and let's explore this together. Let's dive into what's really happening. In 2022, 5 perfect red heifers arrived in Israel, sent by a Christian farmer from Texas to the Temple Institute, an organization that has spent decades preparing to rebuild the Third Temple. These heifers, without a single blemish, are essential for a purification ritual described in Numbers 19, necessary to consecrate the temple. When they arrived, rabbis inspected them, the shofar sounded, and about 300 people welcomed them with celebration. For Orthodox Jews, this is a sacred milestone to bring back the sacrifices that stopped in 70 AD. For some Christians, it's a chilling sign of the end times, tied to Jesus' return. Why is a Christian from Texas involved in a Jewish prophecy? And why right now? The Temple Institute isn't standing still. They've already recreated the golden menorah, sewn the priests' garments, restored the silver trumpets, and trained priests for the rituals. They believe the moment is coming, but the spot where the temple must be built is the Temple Mount, where the Dome of the Rock, one of Islam's holiest sites, stands today. Building there could spark a global conflict, perhaps even the Armageddon the Bible mentions. The Bible doesn't leave us in the dark. In Daniel 9:27 and 2 Thessalonians 2:4, it's written that a third temple will exist before the Antichrist appears, sitting in it and proclaiming himself God, an event called the Abomination of Desolation. Jesus warned about this in Matthew 24, along with wars, famines, and earthquakes, which he called the birth pains of a new world. He said the gospel must reach all nations before the end, and today, with technology, that's closer than ever. But he also spoke of an unmatched tribulation tied to this temple. Are we seeing the first signs? In 1967, Israel's victory in the Six-Day War put Jerusalem under Jewish control, fulfilling for many the prophecy in Luke 21:24 that the times of the Gentiles would end. Since then, the Temple Mount has become a powder keg, with nations aligning in ways that echo Zechariah 12:3, where Jerusalem becomes a burdensome stone for the world. There's more. The Mount of Olives, where Jesus lived such intense moments. His tears, his prayers, his ascension sits atop an active geological fault. Scientists say a strong earthquake could split it in half, just as Zechariah predicted. Is it coincidence or prophecy aligning with nature? In 70 AD, when the Second Temple fell, Jesus' words in Matthew 24 came true. For 2,000 years, no temple has been rebuilt. Why? Some believe God held this moment for now, preparing something even greater. Today, with the red heifers, the Temple Institute's work, and global tensions, it feels like the appointed time is nearing. But it comes at a cost. Building the Third Temple won't be peaceful. The Dome of the Rock has stood there for centuries, and any attempt to disturb it could set the Middle East ablaze. The Bible speaks of destruction before redemption, and history proves prophetic moments bring sacrifice. The First Temple fell to the Babylonians, the second to the Romans. Could the third bring something even more devastating? Who's behind it? The Temple Institute receives funds from donors worldwide, including evangelical Christians who see this as scripture being fulfilled. Their intentions are mixed, and the outcome unpredictable. This is just the beginning. Jerusalem's story weaves science, faith, and politics into a fabric that's both fascinating and terrifying. Stick with me to see what comes next. The stakes are rising, and the clock doesn't stop. Let's go even deeper into this unfolding story in Jerusalem, because what's next could be the turning point no one expects. Think about it. For over 2,000 years, since the fall of the Second Temple in 70 AD, and the Jewish people have dreamed of rebuilding their holy place on the Temple Mount. For centuries, they prayed, waited, and planned. But now, in 2025, those preparations are moving from paper to reality. The Temple Institute isn't just dreaming, they're acting. Beyond the red heifers that arrived in 2022, they've already prepared the altar incense, restored the sacred tools, and even trained a group of priests, descendants of Aaron's lineage, ready to resume the sacrifices. It all seems too aligned to be coincidence, but what does it mean? For Orthodox Jews, it's the restoration of a divine promise. For Christians who study the end times, it's the harbinger of events leading to Jesus' return, and also the rise of the Antichrist. The Bible is clear: the Third Temple plays a central role in end times prophecies. In 2 Thessalonians 2:4, Paul writes of a man who will oppose and exalt himself over everything that is called God, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. That's the Antichrist, and for him to sit in the temple must exist. Daniel 9:27 says he'll make a 7-year covenant, but halfway through, he'll stop the sacrifices and set up the abomination of desolation. Jesus reinforces this in Matthew 24:15, warning us to flee when we see that sign. So if the Temple Institute succeeds in building the Third Temple, it won't just be a moment of celebration. It'll be the start of a countdown to something that could shake the world. But how will this happen with the Dome of the Rock in the way? That's the big dilemma. The Temple Mount is contested by Jews, Muslims, and even Christians, each with their own vision of the end. Touching that place is like lighting a match in a powder keg, and the nations are already on opposite sides. Look at what's happening now. Since Israel took Jerusalem in 1967, tensions at the Temple Mount have never eased. Muslims see any Jewish move there as a threat to the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. Meanwhile, groups like the Temple Institute say they don't want to destroy anything, just coexist, building the temple alongside. Is that possible? History says no. When the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, it was a bloodbath. When the Babylonians took the first, it was exile. The third temple, if it comes, could bring a war the Bible calls Armageddon, described in Revelation 16 as the final clash of nations. Zechariah 12:3 already warned that Jerusalem would be a problem for all peoples. And today, with world leaders obsessed with this city that feels more real than ever, and there's the Mount of Olives, the place where it all ends, or begins anew. Zechariah 14:4 says that when Jesus returns, his feet will stand there, and the mount will split from east to west. Scientists know a fault line runs through the region, and a strong earthquake could do exactly that. Think about what Jesus did there. He wept for the destruction that would come in 70 AD, prayed in Gethsemane before being betrayed, and ascended to heaven with the promise to return. Now that same mount could be the stage for his return. But before that, Matthew 24 lists the signs: wars, rumors of wars, famines, earthquakes. Jesus called these birth pains, saying the end wouldn't come immediately, but that the gospel would reach all nations first. Today, with the internet and global missions, that's nearly fulfilled. Yet he also spoke of false messiahs and prophets deceiving many, and the Antichrist could be the greatest of them, using the temple as his throne. Who's funding all this? The Temple Institute doesn't work alone. Evangelical Christians, especially from the United States, donate millions because they believe the temple hastens Jesus' return. A Texas farmer sent the red heifers out of that faith, but what they don't say loudly is that according to the Bible itself, this temple also opens the door for the Antichrist. It's an irony. The same event some see as redemption could bring destruction first, and the cost, beyond money, there could be blood. If construction begins, nations like Iran, Turkey, and others might react, fulfilling prophecies like Ezekiel 38, where a coalition attacks Israel. Jerusalem is becoming the center of a global chessboard, and every move is risky. But it's not all darkness. Revelation 19:11 paints Jesus' return as glorious. I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse, whose rider is called Faithful and True. He's not coming to die this time, but to reign. The Mount of Olives will be his landing point, and no wall, army, or government will stop him. The question is, are we ready? Matthew 24:44 says he'll come at an hour we don't expect, like a thief in the night. The signs are there, the heifers, the preparations, the tensions, but the Bible also says many will be caught off guard, like in Noah's days, feasting until the flood hits. Today, Jerusalem is full of tourists, worshippers, and conflicts, but beneath it all, there's an expectation crossing religions. Jews await the Messiah, Christians expect Jesus, and Muslims have their own view of the end. 3 faiths, 1 city, 1 prophecy that could change everything. So where do we stand in this? The Bible has fulfilled 81% of its 735 prophecies, according to scholars. The remaining 20% or so revolves around Jesus' return. We're seeing wars and rumors of wars. The gospel spreading and now steps toward the temple. But Jesus told us to watch and pray, not just wait. Looking at the signs, like the red heifers or the Temple Mount, is obeying that call. The clock is ticking, and Jerusalem is the hand. If the third temple rises, the world will never be the same. Stay tuned, because this isn't theory. It's happening now, and you need to be ready. Don't leave yet. If all this has made you think, if you want to know more about how these events are connecting, then sign up and turn on notifications. We're just starting to unravel the prophecy unfolding in Jerusalem. Click now, join us, and don't miss what's next, because time is running out, and you won't want to be in the dark when the light comes.